My name is Angelo Salazar. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time out to watch this video. I'd like to thank Steam Urban for giving me the opportunity to discuss the topic with you all, and the opportunity to present some information that I think is useful, and I hope that you all think is useful as well. So some quick background about me. I went to Rutgers for undergrad. I studied public health and social work. I've worked for various nonprofits in the Newark community. After some time working, I decided I want to go back to grad school. I went back to the Blaustein School at Rutgers University and ended up getting a master's degree in city and regional planning. I've been exposed to a lot of different subjects while studying and reading and doing the coursework. So there's lots of topics that I feel are very important to make sure they are a part of who I am, what I think, and how I want to continue to develop as a professional. Without any further delay, the presentation that I put together is called Environmental Justice, How the Built Environment Impacts Our Health. So to start off, I just wanted to give some definitions about what environmental justice is. And so I looked online, I found 3 different organizations that I think are pretty significant when it comes to environmental health and environmental issues. So the organization that you see on the left is the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and they define environmental justice as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of their race, color, national origin, or their income status, when it comes to the development, implementation, enforcement of environmental laws and policies. And they've stated that they believe that environmental justice has been achieved when all people enjoy the same level of protection from environmental and health hazards and have equal access to the decision-making process to have a healthy environment in which to live, learn, and work. The Natural Resources Defense Council, which you can see NRDC, they're an environmental advocacy group, and they believe that the environmental justice movement has been brought up because it seeks to address the fact that people who live, work, and play in America's most polluted environments are commonly people of color. They also state that communities of color are routinely targeted to host facilities that have negative environmental impacts. They also bring up the fact that motivation, or kind of the underlying reason behind a lot of that, is a term referred to in the environmental justice movement as environmental racism. And that's, I feel that's an important term to bring up, for the simple fact that environmental justice, as you can see from just the first 2 definitions that I bring up, is the fact that more often than not, Black and brown communities are the ones that get the short end of the stick and are forced to live in close proximity, or are more likely to be exposed to pollutants that could have negative impacts to their health. And so if the underlying factor or the common theme is race, then you could come to the conclusion that that is an environmental racism. You're exposing people to these risks, or you're not prioritizing their health because of the fact that they're minorities. So I think that's an important term to bring up. And the last organization to the right is the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. And they see that environmental justice touches a wide variety of issues related to quality of life. And that includes housing, health, transportation. These low-income communities and communities of color across the country as well as in New Jersey often bear the brunt of pollution and the impacts of climate change. Again, all three of the definitions here, three different organizations, but all three of the definitions really revolve around the same common themes. Really, black and brown communities are more likely to be at risk or more likely to live in close proximity to pollutants, to sources of pollution. So, how does the built environment impact our health? Right? The way I see environmental justice is that it's all about proximity, right? It's all about what you're close to. And the built environment is, in fact, your surroundings, right? So the buildings, the businesses, the streets, the roads, um, all of that is the built environment, your surrounding, what's around you. And so a very important key to this whole discussion is what spaces do you frequent? What spaces are you frequently in that might put you at a higher risk or a lower risk? And if you live in an environmental justice community, chances are that the spaces that you frequent are going to put you at a higher risk in being impacted by multiple sources of pollution. And so in this slide, I took a screenshot of an aerial image. If you don't know what this area is, this is the East Ward in Newark, the Ironbound section within Newark, New Jersey. And the reason why I felt that this was important is because if you see over here, I'm circling it on the screen. This is the Cavanta plant. Uh, in this location, garbage is actually dropped off and incinerated to generate power. And so the main issue is the fact that that garbage that's being incinerated ends up releasing, molecules and particles, exhausts into the air. And who who ends up inhaling all that? Who ends up dealing with the externalities of all of that garbage that's being burned? And obviously, it's the local community within this area. Now, were they themselves the only community that created the garbage that was being burnt there? No. In fact, a lot of that garbage comes from other municipalities within Essex County, even New York City. And so there's this very local community that's dealing with those issues, even though that garbage is coming from multiple parts, multiple areas, sometimes not even from the same state. And so why here? Why this community? And on the bottom, you can see this is a zoning map that I got from the City of Newark's website. And if you don't know what zoning is basically the guidelines that the city has put or the town, municipality has put that basically determines what type of businesses or what type of structures can be built on that land. And so you can look at the legend right here on the right, and you see this kind of fuchsia to purple gradient, and the really dark fuchsia color says heavy. So that's labeled as heavy industry. And so it's not surprising that this same area where the power plant is categorized as heavy industry, right? Not a surprise. You can also see that there's a PSE&G power plant here. So there's obviously a lot of heavy industry in the area. But if you look just, you know, definitely less than half a mile, probably 3-4 blocks away, you see this orange shade, and you could see from the orange shade on the legend that orange corresponds to medium density residential or slash commercial, which really just means that you're probably going to have buildings that are maybe 4 stories high that have some sort of a combination of, a commercial unit with maybe residential housing on top. Um, and a little further down, you see a lot of these tracts of land in yellow, which means more residential. You see this red color, which red means that it's high density residential and commercial. So these are parts of the Ironbound community that obviously people frequent. People live here. People live in these houses in this area. People go to the stores. People go shopping to eat. These are places. Again, these are places or spaces that people frequent. You know, again, their surroundings. Um, and so when you look at all of this purple, and you consider the fact that you've also got the New Jersey Turnpike as well as Route 1 and 9, the rail lines. There's a lot of sources of pollution. There's a lot of exhaust and fumes that get thrown into the air that this community then has to deal with. And so, again, why this community? Why here? And that's what environmental justice really tries to focus on is why do these groups of people have to deal with a, 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 an unleveled risk? Why are they the ones that need to be dealing with this type of stress, and why aren't those issues, or why isn't that level of pollution more or less distributed evenly? Another example that I wanted to bring up, um, and for whoever isn't able to kind of identify right off the bat, I mean, you may be able to see Yankee Stadium here in the Bronx, but yes, where these images here are of the Bronx. And so I don't know if any of you watching drive often or don't drive at all. But basically, I took the screenshot and then I highlighted the Cross Bronx Expressway in red, right? And this is a significant environmental justice project. The Cross Bronx Expressway, that is. It's been discussed in many different settings as being a very big environmental justice issue. Um, and to give you a little more background, when you look at the bottom image, you can see a lot of these bold yellow lines, right? This is the highway network. You can see Route 1, Route 995, 87, Route 9A, 278. So you see all of these bold yellow lines. And the Cross Bronx Expressway, if it weren't there, people driving would either have to loop all the way down and then back up to go towards upstate New York, or they would upstate New York or Connecticut, or they would have to go this way and then at some point find a way to cut towards the right. Um, and so, really, the idea behind the Cross Bronx Expressway, and the important part was to make it easy for people to come in and out of urban areas or cities. This is a pretty common theme that you can see in various cities and states throughout the country. Um, you know, there was a point where cities were booming and there was industry and there were jobs, and at one point things turned, and those industry and manufacturing jobs ended up leaving, ended up being taken overseas, taken elsewhere to cheaper parts of land. Um, and when that happened, a lot of people decided to move out of of these urban areas. And when I mean a lot of people, I really mean a lot of people that had the resources to leave. More often than not, that meant that they were white individuals, which is why a lot of urban areas are primarily black and brown. And so the Cross Bronx Expressway is an environmental justice issue for the simple fact that it's very likely to assume that the people that live in this community, the people that currently live next to the Cross Bronx Expressway, don't want to live next to the Cross Bronx Expressway. Or before the Cross Bronx Expressway was actually built, it's logical to assume that the people that may have lived or had homes along the path didn't want to end up losing their homes. Um, you know, the needs of the affluent individuals that came in and out of the city was prioritized over the needs of the local community. And that in itself is the main reason why the Cross Bronx Expressway to this day is looked at as an environmental justice issue. Um, you could also see in the bottom aerial image that the Cross Bronx Expressway basically separated the southern part of the Bronx from the rest of it. And so that obviously has negative impacts as well, because now that connection that you need to go north south to other parts, to other neighborhoods, it's not there. It's not as easy to do because of the fact that the Cross Bronx Expressway is present. So all of this leads me to the fact that we are the ones that live within our built environment, in our communities, in our neighborhoods. Our lived experiences have value. If there are things in our communities that we don't like, that impact us negatively, then we have the opportunity and power to voice those opinions and hold elected officials accountable, right? So these images I've taken from projects that I've worked on in my studies in graduate school, and I present these because it's important, that perspective of walking through your neighborhood and identifying things that aren't great and finding a way of communicating those needs and communicating those shortfalls is very important. For example, right here, you can see these vacant homes and the poor condition that they're in. You can see this vacant house here as well. The fact that there's no one available to look after these properties makes it possible for people to go and just dump debris and garbage, which poses a environmental issue for a lot of the neighbors in that surround these properties. Another big problem, and you can see kind of from the sidewalk, is the fact that oftentimes the property owner is actually in charge of maintaining the piece of sidewalk in front of their land, which is why when it snows, the property owner has to go and shovel and provide and salt, and so if there's a vacant property and if the property has been vacant for years, who do you go to about getting this sidewalk fixed, right? Who do you go about fixing the issues that are impacting the people just passing by? And the problem there is that if I'm an individual with a wheelchair, or I'm a parent with a stroller, and I'm trying to walk from point A to point B, and I encounter something like this, well, that's making my trip that much more difficult, which might trigger in my head like, it's not worth it. I'm gonna stay home, or I'll wait for someone to pick me up and take me and drop me off to where I need to go. But that impacts our health because one, you're not getting that physical activity that you were going to get if you're walking from point A to point B. It affects our mental health as well because having that time to breathe in the fresh air and be physically active actually helps us with stress and anxiety. Um, and three, if I'm no longer able to walk safely and easily from point A to point B, and I'm now choosing to be picked up in a car or drive myself, I'm now adding a whole nother car to the road, which is gonna add to the pollution in my community, in my neighborhood. Um, Add to the traffic, add to congestion. These are all things that might have been avoided if the sidewalks were in good condition and easy for me to walk along. And so now that we've kind of gotten through those intro slides, um, we get to the first tool that I want to showcase. And I want you all to kind of have the same three questions in your head. And they are, what are you trying to show? What is the story you are trying to tell? And what have you seen that others should be paying attention to? All right. So the first tool that I have here is Google Earth. It's free. All of the tools that I'm presenting today are free. All you need is internet connection and a computer, whether that's your computer, someone else's computer, computer at a library, doesn't matter. And so Google Earth I've used for just general exploring. Um, if I want to search a specific city, if I want to look at uh, the development pattern in the part of Colombia that my family's from, I could do that. I could search the city in Colombia, and Google Earth will take me there. If I want to look at different roads or different buildings, you could do that with this tool. The satellite imagery is really good. You could get on Street View as well, just like Google Maps, and it's good at with measuring distances, which I think is very useful. And I'll show you an example of why it's useful when we get to some of the later tools. Um, Google Earth literally looks like Earth. Not a surprise, right? That's why they call it that. And so I could choose to search a specific place if I want to. Um, I'm just going to go directly into Newark, New Jersey. Again, just because a lot of the information I'm giving, a lot of the images that I had were from Newark. And so again, like I said, the satellite imagery is it's really cool. It's clear, it's clean. Um, if you really want to, you can measure distances right here with the ruler. Let's say I want to measure uh, how long Independence Park is. Well, I got one there. I got one there. Well, we're looking at 350 meters. Well, this is the U.S., right? So we don't do the metric system all that well. So let's go with feet. Um, so it's 1,100 feet. All right. So that's one easy, clean example of how you can use um, the measure tool. You could also choose to kind of, if you want more detail on the map, you can choose to have some more detail. A lot of the businesses, I'll keep it a little more plain. Um, if you want to work on a specific project. So here you click on this point right here, project, um, new feature. Are you trying to draw lines or shapes? Let's draw a shape, right? And so let's say that I've been looking in my community and there's this huge plot of land that I think is ripe for a new park or a new development or whatever the case may be. Um, right now, it shows up as Harrison Park, but it just looks like a plot like a dirt land. So let's just say that this is not a park, in fact, and I want to identify and make note of this location for a project that I'm working on. So I do that. Um, Location one. I would say it'd be best if you label your project, but let's just save it at that. I could then choose to turn it on and off if I really want to. Obviously, I'll end up getting a list of things that I could then turn on and off however I feel to edit all that stuff. I could choose to, change the color if I wanted to do red, and if I want to make it less transparent. So obviously, beat red, you can't even see a piece of land. Um, but I like the fact that you could kind of see through that. So again, you could change the colors that you want. You could change the width of the border if you'd like. You could put some underlying information. If you have any pictures, you could put that there as well. So you could really start to kind of build an inventory of locations that you've been wanting to look at, and you can name or edit the project however you want. Obviously, it's ultimately your work. So you're the one that's gonna know what you think is best. Um, when I go here, and this was an image that I had in one of the slides. I like the street specifically because I like the fact that there's a park, there's some dense buildings, um, there's a quote unquote bus lane, which is not really a bus lane because uh, it's not very effective. It's not painted, nothing. But there's a quote unquote bus lane. But the real cool thing is the fact that there's the light rail. And so if I wanted to drop my person down here to do street view, then I could do so. You know, boom. Like I said, here's the light rail stop. This is the quote unquote bus lane. Again, no marking, no nothing, so it's not really a bus lane. Um, but this is the street view is great. That's something that I always really enjoy. And the last thing that I'm going to show is if you ever want to kind of get an idea of the number of stories or kind of how built out an area is, this actually has 3D. So you go over here, you pop on 3D, and you get to do something like that. Um, so now I'm looking at Newark CBD, Central Ward. You see all the skyscrapers, Prudential. I believe this is the new Prudential as well. Yes, it is. If I want to rotate a little bit, so if I rotate a little bit, I get some of the good buildings in Newark. I also get the New York City skyline all the way in the back. Um, so this is just the 3D feature is also pretty cool. Um, the really easy thing if you want to take some of these pictures and use them, just screenshot. Just use the snipping tool, um, get what you want, and use it in presentations like I did for this. Um, so that's Google Earth. The next program or tool that I'm going to be talking about is Google My Maps. Again, another free tool. Not surprising since it's a Google product. It's different from what Google Maps would be. You can get directions when using this, but it's not a navigation tool. Um, and so again, I bring back the questions. What are you trying to show? What is the story you are trying to tell? And what have you seen that others should be paying attention to? Um, I like using Google My Maps to categorize my observations. You could be really structured. In this picture you see, I have this intersection treatments layer. I have a sidewalk features layer. I have residential uses layer. I have a commercial uses layer. There's also an industrial uses layer somewhere in there. But so it really allows me to categorize what I've seen out on the field, what I've seen while walking through my neighborhood. It's really easy to share with the online community. You could share a link. You could share it to people specifically if you have their emails. You can make it so that they can edit the same map so that you're able to collaborate with others. You could also just make it an open map where I've identified issues A, B, C, and you've identified issues D, E, F. Let's compile all that, and which is why the last point here is that it's good for collaborating with others. And so I'm going to switch out again. Apologies. So this is a neighborhood survey that I put together. I did a studio project in the Dayton community within Newark. Um, and so, kind of to frame it back to environmental justice, um, I just went and I created certain shapes, right? So you see this purple tint. So obviously Newark Airport, the Budweiser factory, and obviously this isn't in satellite view. So if I want to do satellite view, I go to base map, and I just select this right here. So it really it makes it a little easier to kind of just understand what these random boxes are. So Newark Airport, right? The Bush factory. Um, Obviously, a lot of this is industrial. This looks like a lot of cars and scraps. There's steel framing, auto parts. There's heavy duty truck repairs. Um, Dublin Metals. So obviously Sims Metals. So there's a lot of heavy industrial businesses in this area, right? And again, when you look at it, this yellow right here is residential. So it comes back to the fact that this community, which is mostly made up of black and brown folks, I believe the Dayton neighborhood is mostly black folks. Um, this community is subjected to a lot of the industrial businesses that are in this area. And so they're the ones that are dealing with the pollution day in and day out. They're the ones that are essentially risking their lives from just living in this area. But at the end of the day, one, they may very well have an attachment to the area because it's home, it's been home, um, or two, they don't have the means to seek housing elsewhere, and those are realities that people need to be aware of. Um, I also created this orange shape, which is basic. Essentially, it's vacant public housing that's been condemned in poor shape and it's been vacant for decades. And it's an eyesore. You're talking about people that live in this community and need to walk by that on a daily basis, and it's not inviting. It's not great. And again, it leads to that lack of care about what that looks like. It invites other individuals to go and just dump garbage and pile on issues that other local neighbors need to deal with. And it's not fair. It's not great. Another thing that I wanted to show is this is a cemetery, so there's an entrance here to the cemetery, and then there's this golf course, and this is Wicquaig Park. I call it Wicquaig Park. I've heard it several other ways. So if I'm saying it in a way that you don't necessarily agree with, I'm sorry. But so Wicquaig Park, um, this is the golf course. There's no entrance to the park from this golf course. Also important to make note of, golf course is basically half of the park. Just wanted to throw that out there. I always thought that was weird. I didn't necessarily like the fact. Then again, I've never went golfing in my life, so maybe I'm being biased, but I think that that park could be put to better use. But that's an issue for another day. Um, so this location right here that I've dropped a pin at, I've I have it under the sidewalk features layer. And the reason why I dropped the pin, and you can see this image, I actually took a screenshot and then I uploaded the image in here. And you can see this little camera. If I had an image that I wanted to upload, I just click on that, add image, look for the image within my computer and upload it. And so the reason why I included this image and this point is because if you can believe it, there is a very little walking path from the cemetery up around here. Very, very narrow walking path. There's another narrow walking path, well, technically same walking path, but on the other side, kind of over here. But at this specific location, the trees are so overgrown and poor maintained that you wouldn't be able to know that there was a walking path there. Um, and so that compiled with the fact that it's the vacant housing on the left, it's just not an area where you want to be walking. It's not an area that's inviting. It's not an area that motivates you to go out and be physically active. And so those those things, that lack of importance in improving those conditions and making it easier and more inviting and more enjoyable to go out and walk, does have a negative impact on our health. Again, physical and mental. If I go further down, I just dropped a pin here for a religious institution. If you wanted to use my maps to show all of the religious institutions in your community that are resources to people, you can do that. If you want to create a my maps that identifies all of the vacant lots, so just vacant lots, not properties, vacant lots, um, that could potentially be used as community gardens, for example. If you create a map that shows all of the vacant lots in one layer, and another layer shows a lot of the different bodegas or a lot of the different delis, corner stores, small supermarkets, small shops, farmers markets, things like that, then you in one map you've logged possible locations for new community gardens, and two, you've also logged a list of potential partners or locations in which you could go and approach and say, hey, you know, you maybe you're not selling fresh produce right now, but we're growing stuff locally. And one, we want to make sure that this produce is available to the community. And two, well, we're trying to make a buck and make this a sustainable thing, something that it's going to be ongoing, that we're going to be able to maintain and make sure that we have the resources available to fund the garden, everything it needs, and keep on providing that fresh produce to the community for years to come. And so, there you're using my maps as a tool to show the good that can be, the possibilities. Here, obviously, I've shown a kind of a mix of negative things, but that's just what I used this for. Here, I put a green kind of like person playing with a ball, playing with soccer, dribbling a basketball, not really sure, but it's supposed to resemble a park. And so that is the park entrance from Dayton Street. And that is the only entrance to the park on this side. The only other entrance to Wickwag Park is over here. And this one, different than the first one, is in red. And the reason why, and I gave a little description there, but the main reason why I have this in red is one, this is an extremely long crosswalk. I'm not a fan of extremely wide roads. They're not good for creating a walkable environment that motivates you and encourages you to be physically active and walking. It really only makes it easy for you to get in your car and drive anywhere and everywhere. And so there's this entrance to the park there, and then there's this really long crosswalk. So families, kids, they could be leaving the park and need to get across the street, and well, you've got to sprint. You've got to be really quick. You got to be agile because it's not a comfortable cross. And then the other thing is Frelinghuysen Avenue in general is very wide. There's a lot of car traffic, a lot of truck traffic. Haynes Avenue as well is a truck route, and you can see that Haynes Avenue has a direct connection to Route 1 and 9. And so when you put this intersection and you think about the fact that there's literally a park entrance at this location, but nothing to make the crossing safe, it's contradictory. It's like we have a lot of people that are going to be going through this location, but we don't have the street design to make it safe for people to walk and cross. And that's an issue. And then the last thing that I want to show is this red line here that I have, from Frelinghuysen and Haynes Avenue all the way to, yep, it keeps on going, to Frelinghuysen and Van Duyn Street. Not sure if I pronounced that correctly. I measured this already. It's a little under half a mile. And the reason why I decided to show this is because if you zoom in, there's a crosswalk here. If you want to go from east to west, west to east, there's a crosswalk here, and then nothing for half a mile. Nothing for half a mile. That's an issue. That's an area that doesn't take the pedestrian's needs into account. What if I don't have a car? What if I work? What if I work at the exclusive wholesale gallery or flying food group? Or what if I need to get dialysis at DeVita Parkside Dialysis, right? But I'm coming from over here and I want to cross at this location. No, I need to make sure I go all the way to Haynes, in order to cross. And just the fact that I'm not able to do that easily is a problem because we should make it easy for people to walk. We should make it safe for people to walk. We shouldn't be making it easy, and we shouldn't make cars the best alternative in every scenario. Yes, there are scenarios and occasions in which it is much easier if you have a car, but that doesn't have to be the case all of the time. So now that we've gone into Google Earth and Google My Maps, I want to get into the third and last tool, which is Street Mix. Um, and so what this tool is right in the name, right? So Street Mix, it allows you to mix different interventions for the street, to come up with something new. And so again, the three questions that I've been bringing up are: what are you trying to show? What is the story you are trying to tell? And what have you seen that others should be paying attention to? Right? Street Mix, for me, again, another free tool, is good for brainstorming improvements. Just if you think of something that looks cool or could be useful, try it out. If you are looking for a tool that makes it easy to replicate current conditions, current streets, and have a graphic for it, and then create a graphic of what potential improvements to that same street can be, then Street Mix is an easy solution. It's an easy tool that you can use to visualize those solutions. Um, and so for those who can't locate this image, this is actually Bloomfield Avenue in the North Ward in Newark. Again, extremely wide road, no crosswalk, so you either have to go forward or back. Not sure how many blocks, but you can't cross at this location. And that's an issue because I'm someone that believes that you should be able to cross at every intersection. Um, But so, these are current conditions. And I showed you all the measuring tool earlier from Google Earth. You could also measure on Google Maps. Um, so what I did is I used the measuring tool from up above, from an aerial view. I measured from business front to business front. So literally from, let's say, the door or the window of the business to the window of the business on the exact other side. And so that gave me 95 feet, roughly. Again, it's Google Maps, so it's not perfect. This isn't supposed to be an engineering drawing or construction document. This is really just conceptual. What can it be? Um, and so I got 95 feet roughly. And so first step is show what is. What is the current condition? And so this is what I was able to generate from StreetMix. Obviously, the businesses are a little different, but look, this is about a three-story building with a business on the bottom, residential on top. The other one is a two-story building, so I kept like that. Fortunately, I can't adjust the colors of the building. I can't customize that. So it is what it is. This is 90. This is 95 feet in width total. So I measured the sidewalk. It was about 12 feet. So 11 foot for the sidewalk, one foot for the lights. There were four travel lanes and one turn lane. So, roughly about 11 feet wide each lane, except for the turn lane, which was about 12 feet. And then there's parking on each side, right? So this is what is currently being done um, with Bloomfield Avenue. You can see that there's no trees, right? Because Bloomfield Avenue doesn't really have trees, except for essentially the piece of Bloomfield Avenue that cuts through Ranch Brook Park. There really aren't trees up or down Bloomfield Avenue. There might be a few, but not many. So this is what's currently being done with Bloomfield. This is one design that I came up with using StreetMix. And this may not be a realistic example, but it's an example nonetheless. This is me, messing around. There's buses that go up and down Bloomfield Avenue all day long, right? So, being that minorities, black and brown folks, are more likely to use transit, mass transit, and the fact that this community is mainly made up of black and brown folks, then why don't we propose bus lanes that makes it easy for them to go up and down Bloomfield Avenue to downtown, connect to Newark Penn, um, basically go where they need to go whenever they use transit in a more effective and efficient manner. I just threw it out there. The travel lanes are pretty narrow, which is not great for delivery trucks and stuff like that. Which is why I say this isn't a very realistic idea, but it's an idea nonetheless. Another redesign is this one. Again, if you know Bloomfield Avenue, it's pretty steep. It's not gonna be the easiest bike ride, but presenting this idea is great. You don't lose anything from redesigning the street to show, oh yeah, well, you know what? We're gonna put a parking protected bike lane with a buffer, right? We're gonna make it as safe as possible, with the space that we have for people that want to ride bikes. And the main reason why this bike lane is on the sidewalk side of the parked car is because this parked car serves as a barrier from the cars that are driving up and down Bloomfield Avenue. I also made the one drive lane, one travel lane 10 feet, which will be able to accommodate the bus and trucks and stuff like that. And who would have thought we could have trees on Bloomfield Avenue, right? So now we're taking a street that had barely any trees, no other forms of transportation besides obviously walking and driving your car, and now we're greening the street. We're creating, one, trees are visually appealing, they look nice, they are inviting, they make me want to go out and walk by and breathe in the fresh air. And two, they help clean the air. They help clean and filter air, which is another reason why adding trees into this community, into other environmental justice communities, goes a long way in cleaning that the air that is localized, that the people in the community have to deal with on a daily basis. Um, and another design that I came up with, and probably the most realistic one, is I kept 4 travel lanes and the parking lane. There's no bike lane, unfortunately. That hurts my heart, but regardless, we were able to add trees on each side of the street, and so now the current sidewalk is 12 feet. We've now bumped the current sidewalk to 16 feet on each side, which means more space for people, more space for benches, more space for better bus stops and things like that make the pedestrian environment more inviting for people in the area. We kept the travel lanes the same width, which is going to make sure that we're able to accommodate buses and trucks. But the key difference here is that there's no turn lane. What we added is a median in the middle that, one, brings more trees to the area. I'm all for that. But the most important piece is that at intersections, if you're trying to cross from one section to the other, right? If you're trying to cross from one part of the street to the other side, and you're in a wheelchair, you're a stroller, or you're walking with a toddler. I've got a kid myself, so I know how difficult it is to walk anywhere with him. So let's say you get halfway and then the light is about to change. Well, now that this median is here, it serves as a pedestrian refuge, right? So you are now able to stand there and wait for the next light so that you could cross safely. And this is not an option right now. If you're crossing Bloomfield Ave, you need to sprint. You need to know that as soon as that light switches, you're out, you're crossing the street, and hopefully you make it. But the problem is that it's not safe, and so a design improvement like this makes it safer, makes it more possible, more inviting for all types of people, different ages, different abilities, and that's what it's about. And that's why I presented this tool, is because I want whoever views this presentation, I want you all to think about your communities and think about the good and the bad, and utilize these tools, utilize what's available to communicate what you want. And maybe what you want isn't the same as what I want. Maybe you hate my ideas, and that's fine, because everything is subjective. You're entitled to your opinion, I'm entitled to mine. But the if you go back to the environmental justice definitions from the beginning, and environmental justice is achieved when black and brown communities, or communities that have traditionally been subjected to higher risks from pollution and from environmental hazards. Environmental justice is achieved when those individuals are part of the process and are able to work towards improving the conditions that they deal with on a daily basis. Um, I'm gonna switch over really quickly. So first things first is you want to make sure that you know what your width is. So here I'm looking at an 80-foot width. Well, name it. Let's just say this is the new street, right? Let's say width is 80, all right, or width is 100, or Maybe it's a small local road, right? Local residential, right? So it's 40 feet, right? And so obviously none of this fits anymore because it's all too much for a small, narrow road. So, okay, so I had to take everything out, right? So this from here to here is 40 feet, empty space, right? So let's start off with some sidewalks. Sidewalk one and sidewalk two. Let's say 6 feet because 6 feet is not outrageous. And let's say this is a one-way street, right? So let's add a, a drive lane, sure, yeah. Um, and for those with a car, I'll add a parking lane. I'll add, yeah, I'll add a parking lane, and now my next step is again, like I mentioned previously, I like my bikes. Um, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this one. You can lower the width of each, so five, five, and five. Um, I'm going to create a two-way cycle track, is what it's called, and actually parking protected cycle track. And I'm going to put a little buffer. And so here, right, that's it. My space is up. I don't have any more room to play with. I don't have any more room to play with, so I can't do anything else. I'm gonna paint that red, green, and I'm gonna paint this one green as well. Um, and that's it. This is my local. This is my local one-way road with a two-way cycle track. Um, I could make this a different type of house. I can make it that business. I can make it this house right here. I can make it a parking lot. I can make it a fence. Um, I think that's supposed to be a park, but not really. An ocean front, kind of cool. Um, I could increase the amount of stories that for the property. Um, it's a pretty useful tool. I think it's pretty easy to use, and it really does. Uh, give you the opportunity to kind of just mess around with it and come up with some solutions. Also, if I were to want to make something much wider than it is, you can see that it starts saying how much I'm over. And so that's key because obviously I can't push the buildings back. So I need to play with the space that I have. And so there you go. It worked. Once my street is good to go, I could hit share. I could copy and paste it to send it to somebody that it will take them straight here. I could share using Twitter, Facebook. I could print it, or I could save the image onto my computer and use it elsewhere. That's street mix, and that is the presentation. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you to Steam Urban for allowing me the opportunity to discuss this topic with you all. Apologies for any logistical issues that we may have had. Um, if anyone wants to reach out to me, has a question, my email is here. My LinkedIn is here, which is another easy way to get in contact with me, and my Twitter account is here, which is public. So again, thank you very much. Thank you, Steam Urban. Thank you to all of the listeners and watchers. This presentation was really about showing you some tools that I think are cool, some tools that I think are useful, and are free and are available for you to use whenever you want to